Welcome back to another edition of the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast powered by DeerCast and Forum Energy. I'm here at the studio in St. Louis, and we are rolling without Tim, my co-host, my cohort. He forgot we had a start time of 8:30. No, I'm just giving him stuff. He had stuff going on this morning, and he couldn't make it in. So what I do have are a couple of special guests with us. I got Terry's longtime farm manager and hunting partner at this point, Forrest Bonin, and I got another special guest. We have Skeeter Rutkowski from Nutrien, and they're going to kind of take me and guide me through all the things that we need to be thinking about for not only fall plots and all the nutrients that should go into that, or once you're harvesting, your corn and beans, what you need to think about, all those good things. So without further ado, welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
How's it going?
It's going. Okay, so we're getting close to deer season here. In fact, we're filming this about a week before the Missouri deer season starts. And, obviously Illinois, Iowa, a lot of states come in October 1st as well. So fall food plots, it's brutal because every year I think we get this false hope, at least in Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, kind of that area. Skeeter, correct me if I'm wrong. And Nebraska is probably very similar where you're at. But we plant our fall food plots in early August because, here we have a front coming through. We think we got to time it out, hit that rain, and then we get just devastating drought conditions for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks after that. And we've replanted. I've planted twice on some of my fall food plots, and I'm sure, Forrest, you've been watering, but a lot of people watering your plots isn't necessarily realistic. You can't get to your farm, because the consistency of doing that, or even just having the source close by to pull the water from, it's not overly realistic for a lot of people. So let's just start there with the kind of drought conditions we're running into right now. And Skeeter, kind of maybe give us a rundown of what you would do in this scenario to make sure you have something for your deer come October.
Okay. Yeah, we fight the same thing that you guys do a lot. Like the water is the hard deal for us. As you move west, you get less rainfall typically. Now this year we've been blessed with more. But again, I've had the same issue getting into this year, getting started. And we had an early rain, the 1st of August. So I kind of jumped the gun on a couple of them. But I think that's where part of that changed. And I know not everybody has that ability where they may have 5 or 6 different fall plots going in. But I think one thing you can do is just spread your risk out. Instead of going in there and planting all 10 of your plots on the same day, when you get something like that and conditions look good, break it up. Plant, 1 or 2 of them this week, and then wait until you get another timely rain to do some of the other ones. Because I run into the same problem. Like, it looks good for 3 weeks, it really grows and it's good, and then we get hot and dry. And what I found is if those later ones that I didn't plant, if I can keep the weeds clean from them just by making herbicide applications and go in and plant them later, that conserves some of that moisture. And then maybe those will get in there and, come up later. They've conserved water just because nothing's been growing there. And then they make it into season and find some later season rains. Now, on the flip side of that, those early planted ones, they're great if we get enough rain because we get a lot of growth out of them. And the deer will really start hitting those early. So from a moisture standpoint, that's one thing I've found that really kind of helps, if it's possible, is just mitigate your chances of loss just by spreading out when you do those planting dates on those plots.
What's this drought doing to the corn and beans that have been planted, months and months ago? What's this do this time of year when I guess it would typically be finishing out? Does it speed up how quickly the corn tassels out, or does it stunt the growth, or what's it doing to the corn and beans? And is that something that you guys at Nutrien, you kind of have a solution for this type of drought that hits in late summer?
Yeah. So you're spot on. What happens is it just speeds up maturity. And so what you're going to do is have less grain fill out there. You'll still have grain fill, but it just shuts the plant down early on that side of it. There are a couple things that we can do. When we start noticing early season stress, we'll address that stress with products like Terramar. And what those do, they're kind of a kelp-based product that they just help reduce stress out there to where the plant can fight through those drought stretches that you go through. Works corn, beans, even fall seeded crops, anything there, just because it's based off of kelp.
Forrest, what are you guys seeing up at Terry's farm right now?
I mean, it's hot and dry, just like everywhere else. I mean, we've been about 3.5 weeks without any rain right now. So obviously been watering, but a lot of the guys around us, we had a little dry stretch there really early in the spring. So a lot of guys were able to get their crops in way earlier than normal. Like we did. We planted a lot of our corn was done by the first week of April. So our stuff it matured really, really well. We're lucky and had good rains all summer. And there's quite a few guys around us that are shelling corn already. The beans are all turning and starting to defoliate. So they said up here at least a lot of the crops that they think they're going to have record-breaking yields in our area. So we're lucky, but it seems like all that stuff is dying and guys are getting their crops out earlier.
Interesting. Yeah, that should affect the deer, because we always think, especially up there, it's like, he has a lot of timber and cover, and we always think, all right, where are the deer this early in the season. And then once the crops come out, it just changes the way his farm, basically is. It's like a whole herd moves into it. So that's probably actually a good thing for guys, that are holding on to a little bit of timber or cover and maybe don't have as much food. Maybe it's a good thing that the crops are coming out a little bit earlier, because usually, you think about the season, a lot of times you're like, man, I need the neighbor to harvest his, corn or whatever to get the deer out of there and get them over here. Well, maybe that'll speed things up for guys.
Yeah, it should. And right now there's a lot of acorns starting to drop too. So obviously as some of those crops are coming out and then the acorns are dropping, those deer are going to shift around a little bit for those too. That's what we've noticed in the past week or so.
Do you guys is your early season plan to shift to, I know we're predominantly heavily focused on food plot architecture, box blinds, like that's just been a strategy, but you guys specifically hunt a lot of tree stands, timber sets, or field edges. You guys hunt a ton of tree stands throughout the year. So does that affect where you're going to go? Like, are you going to actually go a little bit into the timber, which we usually reserve for the rut time, or, late October? Or are you going to just stick to the field edges still?
We may potentially get into the timber a little bit. Terry and I were actually talking about it this morning. There's been a few of our trail cameras on some of those logging roads on his farm. Those stealth cams have been lighting up underneath some of those big white oaks. So we may, if the temperatures are right and the moon's right, we may try to slip in there. If we got a target deer in there, but if we don't have a target deer that's daylighting in there, we're going to stay out of there for now.
Yeah. So Skeeter, what, give us a little bit of your background. I should have started with this. Give us a little bit of your background there at Nutrien and kind of what your expertise is.
Okay. Yeah. So I've worked with Nutrien for about the last 15 to 20 years. And basically what I work with is a lot of their Loveland products. And then I do a lot of the testing on that, and how does that play into what we do in crop production? And what rates to use? Does it work here? Does it work there? How do we make it work? And the nice thing is that works hand in hand with what you guys are doing, because when you're talking food plots, you're doing the same thing, right? You're trying to raise a crop. We just both have different reasons for doing that. We're in the cash grain market. You're looking for something that actually will harvest some deer and hold them. So that's kind of my position, is to try to help bring that all together and find out what works to raise the best crop that we have.
HS Strut and the DoD Signature Series of calls puts the sound of spring at your fingertips. From the first owl hoots of the morning to the last quiet clucks and purrs in the moment of truth. Be ready for any calling situation the turkey woods can throw at you with HS Strut. So what should we as deer managers, managers of not only the herd and the wildlife, but the food source that kind of gives them the nutrients. What should we be thinking of right now as we're rolling into the season?
Well, I think what I would look at, first of all, like we talked earlier, your production of your summer crop is pretty much done, right? It's shutting down now. That's over. I guess the one question I would have to you guys, how is this affecting what you're seeing on cameras as far as animals transferring over to green now? Is that happening earlier because of that?
Personally, on my couple farms that I hunt, I'm just now finally starting to see deer jump back into my clovers. Like the rest of my green plots that I've planted, like nothing's coming up because of the drought. So the clover started kind of petering out too and burning out a little bit because of the drought. But we did get a little bit of rain last week. And so I've noticed, here in the last week or so, and now this also coincides with the full moon, I noticed they started hitting it more and more. But that also coincides with shedding, their velvet, and because they kind of disappear on me, and I think most guys see this for a week or two, where I just don't get much activity where they're going through those changes. And to Forrest's point, they just may be in the timber, and I don't really put a lot of cameras in my timber. So I'm just finally starting to see them hit back to my green food source. But I don't know, Forrest, is that the same for you guys, or is it a little bit different?
No, I agree with you. It seems like those clover plots have really been lighting up. I mean, we've had some really heavy dews at least. Our clover, most of it's looking pretty good. It's not, some of it's starting to burn up a little bit, but in our bottoms, especially where that soil, there's a little more soil moisture, and that clover's still really green. The deer are really transitioning hard to those now that those beans are starting to defoliate.
I would say out here, I've seen the same thing. Now, again, we've been lucky. We've had some rain. So the food plots we put in, guys, they really look good. But
brag about it.
The interesting part, an example, and maybe you guys can explain this to me, but forever, we went through Labor Day weekend. All up to that point, I had trail cams out. I really didn't see much on our plots, and they were up. We had decent growth on them. Didn't see anything. And I want to say it was right at the 5th or the 6th of September. All of a sudden, one night, I have 2 food plots that are 80 miles apart. And one of them had 5 new bucks show up on it that night, and the other one had 3. And what triggered it for that night, I don't know.
Well, was it cool? I mean, we had a huge cold front come through about the same time the full moon hit. Like I experienced the exact same thing. A bunch of bucks showed up out of nowhere. And I look at the conditions, and it's like, DeerCast is saying great. The pressure's high, the temperatures are down, and it's coinciding with a full moon. That might be part of it.
I think that it had to be something like that, because for that to happen 80 miles apart identically, it was interesting. But that's when I noticed we started getting that transfer over to those green plots. Now, I think we'll continue to see more that goes on, because we are not harvesting corn as far as grain, but silage is coming out in this area. And so that's going to be pushing deer out of the fields, into the draws wherever we have cover and this and that. And then they'll be having to go to different food sources for that. So really, I see that now, that transition over from our summer crops. Now we're moving into what we have for fall food plots as far as what they're starting to hit for food source.
Yeah, we hit that cool front. And of course, right as the season starts here in Missouri, it heats back up. And like this weekend, temperatures in the mid 90s, and it's I don't know. It's just, it's kind of disheartening, because it's like, man, the rain that we got last week during the cool front might have started a germination on the plots that we got in. And I have a feeling they're going to burn up here because there's no rain in the forecast again. And it's coinciding with these hot temperatures. So, is there anything you can do to fight that if you're not watering your food plots, or is it you're kind of just SOL and waiting on another period to come through a cool front with some rain where you maybe have to replant, some cereal, grains or something like that?
Yeah, depending on how big the crop is, I would say would determine a lot of that. If you've got the crop up now, and it's growing and it currently looks good, what it sounds like is you're more worried as we go into this hot spell, what's going to happen. Now would be the time to address that with what we would call like PGRs, or something that reduces stress. So let's look at both of those, what they are. So earlier I'd mentioned using a kelp product that helps reduce stress. Anytime we can put that on, basically what that does is that somewhat triggers the plant to open and shut its stomates on the back of the leaf, so it doesn't lose as much moisture out there. So by putting that on it, the plant just naturally can start conserving moisture. Now, on the other side of it, what we'd talk about would be a growth promoter. And those would have something like IBA and kinetin in them. Those two products, kind of how they work is IBA stimulates growth. which in a dry situation, that's what we want. We need to get roots down there to get whatever moisture we have. So that's where that IBA piece comes in. And then the kinetin piece actually promotes cell division. So we get that plant growing faster. So if we get it growing faster, we're going to get bigger roots, which hopefully will get, down to more moisture. And then hopefully we get more growth above ground. And that's what the deer are after, is eating something there. So when you look at those two products, what I would say is on that IBA kinetin side for the growth promoter, you look at a product called Radiate that runs at about 2 ounces an acre. And then from the stress reduction side, look at a product called Terramar, and that'll help with that as far as more drought tolerance. And you want to run about a quart an acre.
Is there a certain time frame that, like, hey, this is my window to be able to do this, or it won't work, or it's too late? After.
Yeah, the sooner you do it, the better is what I would say. So like right now, you guys had a rain, you got the crop up, get it addressed, get it on there so that the plant can take that in. And then as the season goes, that'll be in the plant and it'll help go through those stressful times.
Is it, say, a week, 10 days goes by before you can get to it? Is that too late? Or,
no,
that's what I'm saying. What's that window?
As long as you still have a living plant out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So as long as the plant's still living. It's hard though, because you look at it and you just wonder, it's kind of sitting still. It's not doing anything. And that's a good thing when you look at these deals. I know that's hard because we want it to get green and lush, but if it can just hold on to life itself and wait for a rain, that's what we're after. So can we keep it alive until it does get a rain? And then once it does, it'll really take off.
Even if they're, we're talking, it just germinated and it's just barely, not even a 5 o'clock shadow across your field. Even then, it still would help it.
Yes, at that point. Yep. And the idea is there, just make sure you're broadcasting that when you're spraying it on to where it's a nice fine mist to where it gets on there. The plant is still going to take that in. You think about it, as smaller plant doesn't need as much to affect it as what a bigger plant would. So it's still going to get its adequate amount of the product.
Where can you find products like that?
If you'd stop in at your Nutrien Ag Solutions locations, and like I said, there's over 1,000 of them in the lower 48. Talk to those guys and just ask them about those two products. The products would be Radiate and Terramar.
Okay. Writing this down. I actually have a Nutrien facility right next to one of my farms. So every time I pass it, I think I need to stop in there to figure out what I'm doing wrong. Okay, perfect. So Forrest, do you have any questions on your end for Skeeter?
I mean, not a ton. I guess the only thing I would think of, what's your opinion on fall plots, like planting method versus, like, you're talking about conserving moisture and root growth and all that? Do you think no-tilling versus working the soil up and broadcasting is going to have an effect on that, as are the plant surviving and doing well, even with those products versus, or I guess, the planting method?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked that, because I experienced both this year, conventional till and no-till. Some of it I had to till up. I just wanted to. It was some kind of virgin ground we had broke out. Wanted to get rid of some of the residue that was there, just get it worked in. We've had good moisture. And another one of them I no-tilled. So here's the ups and downs of it. Like, if you ask me for sure this year, I definitely favor using the no-till method if possible. If you have the ability to use a drill and till it. And there's two reasons for that for me. So again, typically as we move out west, we get less rain. So when I look at something and I know I'm going to no-till this plot that we specifically did no-till, we were shooting to plant this the middle of August is when we wanted to do it. Now, starting with that plot, though, we started clear back in May and June by making herbicide applications and keeping it clean. So we didn't want any weed growth out there. We wanted to keep it as clean as possible. If we could do that, we weren't using up any soil moisture that we would have, because we're just typically. And doing that no-till allowed us to do that, right? We made just herbicide applications of glyphosate, 2,4-D, 3 times throughout the season, kept it very clean. We went in and drilled it no-till, voila, it came up, looks fantastic. So the moisture side, that's one part of it where that helps. Now, when I look at the stuff closer to home where I tilled it up, we've had plenty of rain and everything was good. So I wasn't worried about moisture. I wanted to get it tilled up. They looked beautiful, looked like a garden when I planted them. Kept the weeds off of them throughout the season. What I didn't consider was how many of the weeds would come back in there when I seeded. my fall crop. So right now, when I go out to those, I have an amazing stand of turnips and radishes out there, but I also have the sole, a lot of summer annuals that, we still get throughout the summer, Palmer amaranth, those things. Do I think they'll be fine? As long as there's adequate moisture, I think they'll be okay once we get a killing freeze on those summer annuals. But right now, they just don't look as good because we tilled it up and moved all that weed seed back into the soil and germinated a whole bunch of it. So long story short, I think in most cases, if at all possible, it's worth your time to use a no-till drill and drill it in just to save on weed pressure and to save on moisture.
I think one of the keys to that, what you were talking about, you kept your field clean leading into the no-till. Like that's what always gets me. I think every season it's like, yeah, you look at it in turkey season and it's like, yeah, this is looking pretty good. And then you come back, a couple months later, mid to late summer, and you're like, holy crap. Like it's the weeds are 6 foot tall. It's like, I totally screwed up here and let this get away from me. And the only way to fix it is a lot of times is to burn it off, isn't it?
Yes. And I just knew that going into that this year, that this would be a problem. And where we did the no-till was up north in the sandhills. So we have limited soil holding capacity for water to start out with. So we had a plan going into it. And that plan, most cases, like you said, when you think about putting a fall crop in, it really doesn't start until August. But ours started clear back in May. We started addressing it because of that. Now, is that feasible for everybody? I'm not sure. But, realistically, we were checking up on that plot about every 3 weeks. So if we could get out there and look at it, see how it looked in 3 weeks, and then address it if it needed weed control at that time, we'd make a herbicide application.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's the every 3 weeks is the tough part. I just don't live close enough to any of my properties that I get there often enough if it's not hunting season. And it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And then before you know it, it's too late. So
one quick deal that you could always do on this that takes care of some of that. Most of your trail cams, you can set them up on your plot, keep them on, and you can set a time to where it takes a picture daily, right? It's your eyes that can be there when you're not there. So, you've got the expense of running it, your stealth cam, but the nice thing is if it takes that picture, you get a view of it every day and then you know when to address it.
What if it was there taking pictures and you knew the problem?
I was going to say, Matt's just watching it get higher and higher and higher.
I have to turn the camera off at a certain point because it's too high. Yeah. Okay. So we've figured out what the problem is. It's me.
I just had a quick question real quick, Skeeter. You're talking about your burn down. You're talking about starting that in like May and June, potentially. What's your preferred chemical for your burn down? Because I know some guys, when they spray like corn and bean fields and they go in and maybe want to work that up and plant a green plot, there's residuals and chemicals that don't have a residual. What's your preferred chemical mix for your burn downs?
So on this specific one, I really just stayed with stuff that worked post-emerge. I didn't put any residual because I was worried about that not going. So typically what I like to do when we're doing that is we'll run a full rate of glyphosate. That usually takes care of all the grass out there. And then we'll run a mixture of usually 8 to 12 ounces of dicamba and 16 ounces of a 240 LV6, along with the surfactant package that you need. Now, going forward, I think that early May application that we'd make, we could start adding residuals like metallochlor, something like that, to where we'd get it on. Even acetochlor, like a product called Warrant, would work good. Those will help hold a lot of the grass off in the small seeded broadleaves to where you wouldn't have to be back there as frequently making the applications. I think my caution is by the time you get to July, you probably just want to use those post-emergent products. Even when you look at dicamba and 2,4-D, there's still a window there after application. You don't want to go plant. For sure, legumes are some of the hardest ones. They have to have the longest time set. But even some of the brassicas, it's good to let it sit for at least 2 weeks before you go and plant those in following those applications.
Adventure awaits, and with the Tenzing backpacks, you're ready for anything. Whether you're chasing giant bull elk in the backcountry, monster whitetails in the Midwest, or simply exploring the great outdoors, Tenzing has your back, literally. Designed for performance, comfort, and durability, Tenzing backpacks keep your gear safe and accessible so you can focus on the journey ahead. From innovative storage solutions to ergonomic designs, Tenzing backpacks are built to handle your toughest expeditions. So, gear up with Tenzing, your trusted companion for every adventure. Tenzing backpacks, explore with confidence.
Skeeter, one of the things that I wonder if hunters think about often, but you see kind of a growing trend in general, is like, everything organic and, watching for sprays and chemicals and this and that on your food sources. Like, what do you guys do at Nutrien? I know you guys are a huge company and there's a lot of resource and technology into it. What goes into that side to kind of make sure what we're spraying to kill these weeds is still can be healthy for the deer herd or the just in general, the wildlife population, because then that transfers into the human population.
Yes. And the nice thing, and it's really the industry itself has done every time they come out with a product or any of the products that are out there, when you really get into it and search the label, there's actually parts on there that are made that say, hey, look, there has a pre-harvest interval or there's a grazing restriction in those. So any of those recommendations we make, especially when we're dealing with something like this, we're looking at those to make sure there is not a problem there. But yeah, there's so many choices out there to use that we really have a huge portfolio of stuff we can go through to make sure that, hey, this matches what we do. Even insecticides, we run into somebody may say we have beehives, within a mile of here. That's something we address and we look at that time, so we're not doing injury there. But the label itself, you'll see when you get into it, really has already gone through that. And they've done a ton of work to make sure that these products are safe to do out there. I think they said that, from when they develop a product till it hits the market, it may be 15 years for it to get an actual label to do that because they have to test all that stuff and make sure that those are safe.
Wow. That's interesting. It takes that long. But I mean, it makes sense because you think about something that gets rolled out and you're like, well, how do you know if there's side effects? If it was just something that you created and it's out a year later, how would you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny how the industry's changed from 50 to 60 years ago. At that point, they weren't as worried about that. But anything that's come out in the last, I would say 20 to 25 years, that's usually on the top of their list is with the EPA to make sure those things are all safe.
Gotcha.
Before that.
So as you, when's the Nebraska deer season start up?
Our archery season actually started the 1st of September.
Oh, so you get an opportunity to maybe harvest velvet buck.
We did. The cameras have already shown most of them about 2 days before season started. It already started going hard horn on us. And if you're willing to go out and fight the mosquitoes through it, it could be a great time. But yeah, we can already be out there hunting. So, but again, with what I've seen, most of what I got, everything's more nocturnal at this point. Nothing in front of the stands early at this point.
Yeah. So what type of terrain or what's your setup there? Is it similar to what we're dealing with in Missouri or Iowa or, Illinois, or is it, you talked a lot about sandhills. Is it much different soil and so different terrain?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say the biggest difference is you guys have a lot of timber, what I would call a lot of timber compared to what we do. We hunt a lot of creek bottoms and river bottoms. That's where our timber is. The problem right now is a lot of them are still in the cornfield, right? They'll use that for cover all season long. And so as that gets harvested, they'll come out. But a lot of our hunting takes place in river bottom, along creek beds, and then along field edges and those deals. As you move west, you'll get into some more of the like CRP patches and that for guys that do some mule deer hunting, which they do a lot of spot and stalk there. But predominantly on our whitetail, it's still just doing a lot of hunting along the creeks and streams and river bottoms.
So do you have anything, you're going after this year specifically, a deer that you'd known from years past?
I'm waiting for one to still show up on camera. Last year I had 3 really nice ones, and passed one of them up, was going to let a buddy kind of take the shot and have that, and it just didn't work out. And then 2 weeks later, 2 of the 3 I found out were harvested, 2 miles from where we're at. But that's just the name of the game. It was good. It was people I knew that had got them. They were great deer, and glad to see they had them. And they were here. They were on our place until October 15th, and then it was just like a light switch. They left and went down to the river, and never seen them again until they got harvested 2 to 3 weeks later.
Yeah. So basically, the beginning of the rut kind of starts to pick up, and they're expanding their home range, and it's all she wrote.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So as far as this year, I haven't found anything yet that I've got super excited about, but we've got a lot of time. Like I said, we got to get a lot of crop out. Once the crop starts coming out, we really a lot of take place, and then things start showing up on camera.
Yeah. Yeah. Forrest, how about you guys as we get close to the Missouri opener? Is there, good strategy in place for ours at hey, here's the heat wave, and we're just going to sit this out until it gets good?
Yeah, we've been watching the weather, and it looked like it was supposed to get pretty decent there right towards the opener, and then they just keep pushing that heat back and back. Terry and I were just looking at it this morning, and I mean, I think opening day here it's supposed to be 90 degrees, so I don't think we're going to be hunting. We'll be shooting deliverables and all that stuff, and a lot of our deer haven't showed up yet. It seems like his farm, it really lights up here end of September, beginning October, when all the crops get out and all the bucks really shift in here. We've got a couple mature deer, and one we're kind of watching. He's not a mega giant by any means, but he's a 6-year-old, and he put on quite a few inches from last year, so he's going to be one we target if we do get a couple good weather days here early.
Have you guys seen? Last year we talked about this where we got decent rain in the spring and maybe early summer, and it kind of shut off, and so the antler growth development kind of stopped with it. Now, this year, we had rain further into the summer, and we've talked about that at great length. Have you seen, up until the last month and a half, it's been pretty good, and then that drought kind of kicked in. Have you seen it affect what what the antler growth development would have been? They're trying to finish out, or, hey, we had a good growing season all the way to the end?
It seemed like we had a decent growing year. I mean, there's a few deer few younger deer that really blew up. It doesn't seem like anything like made a humongous jump by any means. It just seems like it was a pretty good growing year already or overall. But nothing crazy. It just seems, I don't know, maybe a little above average.
And you hear a lot of guys saying, man, this deer blew up or that deer blew up. And I really didn't see that out of my herd either. I would say standard growth from one year to the next on the deer that I'm, looking at.
Yeah, it seemed pretty average to me. I mean, it seems like there's always going to be one or two deer that blow up no matter what. I mean, you could have a below average year and there's going to be one or two that really explode, but as a whole, it doesn't seem like anything's like huge this year by any means. Yeah.
How much are you watering your food plots right now, Forrest?
We didn't plant because our crops did so good this year, our beans and corn. We didn't do a ton of green plots this year. So I have 2 plots that I'm watering right now, and I'm watering them every couple of days, and they're small and they're hot wired. So I'm putting 1 tank of water on them every 2 days. So 1,800 gallons. And it's keeping them going all right, but we have so many turkeys this year. Our turkey hatch was incredible. And those little poults, they're hard on them, and they're going in and plucking out every little plant.
Oh, really? Even yes, not much you can do for hot wiring that, can you?
Oh, I ordered a couple coyote decoys the other day, and we're going to try putting coyote decoys in our food plot and see if that deters them for a couple weeks to keep them out of there. We'll see.
I've not heard of that one before.
Yeah, well, I never have either. But
that's a Terry idea, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Well, let's see if it works.
Hey, Forrest, I got a question for you. You said you guys have kind of gone into a drought. When you look at your watering holes, has that decreased the amount of watering holes that you have available out there for the deer?
Our ponds were all really, really full. The only thing I've noticed that's decreased is like we have a couple creeks running through the farm, and usually when we're getting rains, there's those pools that are a little bit deeper that hold water all year. And those have dried up, so it's pushing deer onto our ponds more. But as a whole, I think on this farm here that we have 13 or 14 ponds. And so the deer have been hitting those more so than the creeks, and they're having to actually move up to the water holes, where throughout the summer they haven't because there was water in those creeks.
I noticed as we were talking, you were kind of a little sounded down that it was going to be 90 degrees when you guys went out there on the opener, right? And like being out west, like for me, where we have reduced water holes due to being dry, those are usually the days I get the most excited about going out and hunting early, because I know it's going to push into water early. So in the evening, a lot of times, if I can find an 85 or 90 degree day in October, that's really good, because they're just forced to come to water. And I think a lot of that has to do with hair growth. From what I've looked at, like everybody thinks that hair growth is just, it's pushed on by, it's getting colder, so they put more hair. But it sounds like it's more like day length, right? As the days start getting shorter, they start putting more that on. And so really an 85 degree day in October probably feels a lot hotter to them than what a 95 or 100 degree day would be in July. And so getting back to what I was saying is, on those real hot days, those have been really good days for us to go out and sit at water holes in the evening, because it's amazing how a lot of those deer, if they're secluded enough and they can get cover getting in there, we'll start seeing deer come to water as early as 5:30 in the evening.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, Terry and I, our strategy early, like last year, it was warm all the way through October, and we did exactly what you said on those warmer days. We sat those water holes at fun last year. We had some really good encounters. Just we never saw our shooter that we were trying to kill.
You guys specifically put a lot of those revolver 360 cameras in your water holes, right? To kind of get an idea of where, because you think about how many different ways a deer can come into a water hole, how you can miss it on camera. And you went ahead and put some out in the middle of the water holes, so you're kind of getting that full 360 view. Are you getting a lot of good pictures? I guess the last week it's been cool, so maybe not then, but in the weeks leading up to that, were you getting a lot of good pictures?
They were decent. They've actually, like I was talking about, these creeks have been drying up because we haven't had any rain. And like some of those deeper holes, they've just dried up in the last few days. And like the last 2 days have been by far the best days we've had on those revolvers in the pond. And they work absolutely awesome for that. Go out and I just put my waders on, go out, stick a T-post out. And those ponds they're not huge. So those revolvers can trigger the whole way around, and we run a solar panel on them so they can run all year. And we've been getting some really, really good pictures on them the last couple of days.
I just think of the intel, the MRI on knowing, hey, yeah, we are getting one of our shooters here. Especially if you got that many water holes, it's like, all right, where do you sit?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, any other topics we haven't covered as far as like kind of getting ready for, the last sprint of food plot work on your farm, maybe as it pertains to replanting. I just have a feeling a lot of guys are going to be replanting there in early October. Forrest, what is it that you guys typically plant if you have to replant and that late in the season?
Typically, when we're replanting, we're running some sort of cereal grain mix. Oats, wheat, rye, triticale, something along those lines that isn't going to quite take as much moisture. It's going to get up and grow a little bit quicker, and not have to, like those brassicas or the radishes and stuff, they're trying to put on a bulb and just require a little bit more moisture. So we'll typically go with a cereal grain mix later on.
Yeah. Skeeter, what should we be thinking about in your regard? Like, if you have to plant that late, is there something, have to replant that late? Is there something we need to be doing as far as the chemical goes?
Yeah. What I would say, the first thing, generally with later planting, you usually want to drop a little more seed is what we would do, just because lack of growth. So you'd want to up your seeding rates on those cereal rye. And I'm just going off of what we do specifically in agriculture when we get to those later dates, is to definitely do that. The next thing, like I said, is do something with a growth promoter. Get it to where you're putting something on that promotes it to grow quicker. You're limited, and it's not just off of temperature. I think a lot of guys think, well, it just doesn't grow as quick because of temperature. But we always discount sunlight, right? We have to have sunlight to photosynthesize, and as we get later, the days get shorter, so we have less sunlight. So anything we can do to speed that up definitely helps out. And again, there's places like where we're at where we have really good growth because we've had moisture. The other thing I would watch how hard the pressure is from some of these as far as getting grazed by deer. you may want to go in and make an additional nitrogen application to those just to keep that growing and keep that growth there so they don't move off to somewhere else.
Perfect. All right. Go ahead, Forrest.
I was going to ask that if you go in, so like a lot of guys will go in, they fertilize when they plant their food plot initially. And then when they go in and replant, is that something where you need to make another fertilizer application? Or if you do like a cereal grain or rye or something like that, you need to have a different fertilizer mix than you would with your brassicas?
Yes. That's the one thing I'd say, like where you were doing brassicas, you probably didn't put as much nitrogen out there, if any. And so when you go to a cereal rye, anything that's a cereal product, you would want to put nitrogen out there with it. So if you can make a last minute application of dry urea or UAN would be a great deal. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 pounds of nitrogen per acre.
I guess I have one more fertilizer question. So like a lot of guys just talk about NP and K. Is that something for your fall plots where you'd want to be worried about some of those micronutrients as well and putting some of those on? Or if you just worry about your NP and K, is that going to cover the bulk of what you're wanting to do?
When you start out as far as planting, that's what I would do. When you're using a soil applied fertilizer, we'd concentrate on the NP and K and liming, get that done before you plant. I think the micros is a huge part of that. However, when I would address that, I would do that once the crop is up and do a foliar application. And that's where the tissue sampling comes in. If you can get that crop out of the ground, it looks good. Take a tissue sample, turn that in. That'll come back with some recommendations on what to do. Zinc is a real important one in cereal crops, I know, to address. And again, I'm not saying we need to address that with dry fertilizer, but I would look at making a foliar application from now until probably the middle of October, if at all possible. There's products out there. You can get some like Nutrien Complete that's basically a gamut that'll cover everything out there that you can run and put that on foliar. But the plant is way more efficient at taking those in foliar than it is through the roots.
You mentioned the tissue sampling. If anybody wants to learn more about that, Forrest actually did an episode on deer season 25. I think it was the first episode of this season. It's on our YouTube channel over on DeerCast with the guys from Nutrien. So go check that out, and you'll get to learn a little bit more about what Skeeter's talking about there. Okay. All right. Anything else, Forrest?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head right now.
Skeeter, any closing thoughts for us?
No, not at this time. I think we kind of covered everything. Just remember, it's not over with until it, the plot's dead and done itself. We got a lot of growth left out there. Just take care of it. Don't finish at planting time. Just keep an eye on it and get it all through the season here. Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate you jumping on with us and kind of taking us through some of this stuff. If anybody out there is listening to the podcast, please, give us a shout out, wherever you're listening at, leave us a rating, share the podcast with your friends. And we have a thing called the RAC Pack over on Facebook. It's a private Facebook group that you can join, the 100% Wild RAC Pack. We got a couple new members, Dakota Lamb, Oscar Sacato. It's as the season gets going here, there's a lot of activity that really starts up because guys are asking questions, hunting situations, and maybe they're, showing pictures of deer that they got and asking what they need to do to try to harvest this deer, or just showing pictures of deer they killed. So it's a good place to be, a good community. So feel free to go over there and check it out. And I think that's all for today. Next week, I believe, and I'm not sure what order these are going to run, but I believe next week, actually, Forrest might be on with us again. We're heading to Idaho for an elk hunt. Forrest is going to be filming, and Aaron Bennett's going along with us, Dustin Lynch. So we're really excited about that. Archery elk in Idaho again. We got a little redemption that we're after. So we're going to talk about kind of the prep, the planning, all the camera equipment, all that good stuff on next week's episode. So make sure and stay tuned for that. Aaron and Forrest will be in studio for that one. So until next time, everybody that started hunting, be safe, wear your harnesses, and good luck out there. The season's finally here. Till next time, peace out.
DeerCast movement prediction and mapping tools combined with our exclusive virtual rain gauges gets you ahead of your game. We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by DeerCast Maps, waypoints, weather, virtual rain gauges, and more. Every tool you need to get ahead of your game.